Merry Christmas, nerds, and welcome to our probably last video of 2023, and what a year it's been. Thank you very much to the, as of this moment, 568 of you who have subscribed to our channel and who continue in some portion or other to watch our videos. Thank you very much from the whole team. We truly appreciate it. Now, what is today's video about? Well, Games Workshop, those sneaky little rascals, are over Christmas on Boxing Day and on the 27th released 2 new Warhammer The Old World articles. Things are really gearing up for a relatively early release. Maybe January, maybe February. I don't think it'll be as late as March, but we have got, after the leak that we had, we have got a core box announcement, and not just a Khemri core box. Oh no, not just the Tomb Kings, we've got the Bretonians as well, and we've got the rest of the Khemri range as well, the new figures that are going to come along with the classic ones. And on top of that, we have got an in-depth look at Bretonia as a faction. And because as part of the launch release, not only did they preview the boxes, but they previewed the 2 books that you will need to buy in order to have the army rules. There's a light side and a dark side, essentially, but they also previewed the in-depth faction books, which are a little bit like an army book, except they're unnecessary because you can play with just your faction's core book. But because of that, they're showing you a little bit of detail about Bretonia in there. Special characters, including the return of the Green Knight. So, shall we go and take a look? Let's see what we've got for this little after Christmas treat. To the titles! Right then, so as I mentioned, on Boxing Day we got the big reveal and confirmation of the single faction starter boxes that are coming out. One for Bretonia and one for the Tomb Kings. Now just take a look at these. So these beautiful core boxes, obviously anyone who follows the Warhammer community or the old world on any social media will have seen these. You'll have seen these on our Instagram and Facebook as well, which, by the way, please do go check us out, follow us, sub to our channels, and, you know, join in any discussions and chats we have about this, because we love this sort of stuff. We love having a chat about it, and it's really good if you come and we can just get into a real in-depth discussion about what we can expect. But 2 boxes, one for the Tomb Kings of Khemri and one for the Bretonia. And just look at that art. That is not figures on the box, which is handy, but there's figures on the back. That is glorious, glorious art once more, and this absolutely fantastic piece of art, which makes one scene when the boxes are put together, it almost makes you want to buy both, doesn't it? What about that, hey? That's an investment, but almost worth it just for the picture. And what I like is that behind it you have got the same scene but using the miniatures, and that's just really cool. I like that a lot. But so, as we know, no single launch box for the old world. There are 2 separate and massive core army boxes, and this is the cool bit. Each army box contains 1,250 points worth of army, with lots and lots of miniatures. Now, not only do you get the miniatures, you get a 352-page hardback copy of the rulebook. 352, that is a significant weighty tome. You also get a 4-page reference sheet, 20 d6 dice, 1 6-sided scatter dice. Yay, scatter dice is back, but sadly no misfire dice. 3 weapon templates, and 2 classic red plastic measuring sticks. As we all know, they are whippy sticks. And plenty of transfer sheets. The Tomb Kings, as you can see there, what a force. Look at that, that's just one box. Tomb Kings comes with 93 miniatures. That is 40 skeleton warriors, 32 skeleton archers, 16 skeleton horsemen, 3 skeleton chariots, a Tomb King on foot, and a Lich Priest on Necrolith Bone Dragon. That is massive. Not just the dragon, which also is massive, but that's one huge army in a box, and they've not really revealed prices yet, but there's a decent whack worth of miniatures there. Very excited. But on to the Bretonians. The Bretonians only get 76. Oh, 76. But what a 76 miniatures you get. You get the new lord on the massive Royal Pegasus. And can be built as a Duke or a Baron. You get a lance formation of 12 Bretonian Knights of the Realm, 36 men-at-arms, and 24 peasant bowmen with 2 defense stakes. There are 3 Pegasus Knights and a massive transfer sheet with 176 transfers to cover all of the many Bretonian factions. This, again, 1250 points, is a magnificent, magnificent force to start with. Now, they've divided it up and you've got smaller regiments of knight, which are powerful but fragile if you lose a few. They have got, with your 36 men-at-arms, 2 squads of what looks to be 18, which I don't know how they'll fare at that, or whether you need them to be bigger, but you have options. The only one you don't really have many options with is your peasant bowman. 24 of isn't necessarily what you'd want unless you're going to play it really loose and go for really long formations, but again, it's a great starting point. And flyers there, 3 flying knights, and then the lord as well. You're going to have some maneuverability with your knights on the ground as well. So what an incredible pair of boxes, really good. And look at this to follow. This is the rule book, and it looks gorgeous, and I like that all the main factions are on the bottom, and there's little elements around of all the other factions if you look, and hints everywhere. But I love this new blue and gold style. It's really reminiscent of the Tomb Kings being the core villain, certainly of this first part of this iteration of the game. But 352 pages, 70 pages of background on the world of legend, core and advanced rules for the game, an explanation of the winds of magic, rules for casting spells, a gallery of armies painted by the Heavy Metal Studio, which I used to love leafing through those and seeing and dreaming of what I could possibly own. And then rules for building armies, setting up your battlefields, and also they're going to release it as an ebook, which is fantastic because this is a heavy thing to carry around, and sometimes when you just sat there, you want to have a look on your phone or your tablet and read something up without pulling a kilogram worth of book off the shelf. Now, this is the bit that we were all curious about, because rules were going to be available at release for all of the 9 core factions, and were they going to be in this big book or separate? Well, it turns out they're going to be in 2 separate books. Forces of Fantasy and Ravening Hordes. Forces of Fantasy is 192 pages long. It covers Dwarven Mountain Holds, Empire of Man in all its various forms, Kingdom of Bretonia, the Wood Elf Realms, and the High Elf Realms, which is pretty good because that is where I am right now in my current mission, to repaint the High Elves of my youth. So I will be buying that book in addition to one of those main boxes without a shadow of a doubt. So that's a really good one. You get an introduction, a gallery of miniatures, grand army composition list as we saw in the previous one about how to build your army and what must be done and what you must have, and I assume each one's going to be similar but a little bit different. You will get special rules, magic items, and unique spells for your faction, which is great. Ravening Hordes, by way of return, is the same but for the bad guys. It is a 160-page hardback or ebook, and it's similar material for the Orcs and Goblins, Warriors of Chaos, Beastmen, and the Tomb Kings of Khemri. We were a very narrow bunch of bad guys at the moment, but what a great bunch at the same time. Some really good armies there. And if anyone's been looking at my eBay recently, you'll notice that there's been a lot of Beastmen up for sale, a lot of classics, so check that out as well and get yourself a really good deal on some amazing stuff. Apparently you will need the Old World rulebook to use either book, but that's to be fair, and the joy is here. If you buy 2 books in addition to the rules, you've got the rules for all the factions. You can play as you will then. That is amazing. That is a lot simpler than it used to be. But this is where Games Workshop throws another little curveball. Great. You've got the book, you've got your separate army book for the faction you want, and you've got the army book to see what your opponent's playing as well. You are covered. But what about an Arcane Journal? Arcane Journals are a new thing, and currently there are 2, and there will be more for the other factions as they get individual focus, probably over the course of the next year or so. But these are similarly akin to what an old Warhammer Armies book would be, except probably more thematic and less rules-based. These things are things that will firstly, they're softback, not hardback. They will expand out the history and the heraldry and the maps of your faction. They will talk about special characters, apparently including a certain Undead Emperor. Now, are we just talking Seteret, or are we talking Nagash? Please let it be Nagash. It's been a long time since there's been some really good Nagash figures and rules, and I think it would be amazing to see the Archlich back. But it gives you more magic items and spells, a historical scenario for you to play out, and thematic armies of infamy, which lets you to select different compositions. So it's really alternate army lists, and probably some of the more interesting and unique lists rather than the generic one you get in the main book. So it's worth buying, but it's not required. But even at the end of the day, that is, to understand pretty much everything that's going on, you need 3 books to get the maximum for your force. If you buy no miniatures and you've got your old army on the shelf, that is your minimum purchase right now, and that's all right. I'm quite happy with that. So, as an example, the Bretonian Arcane Journal has rules for armies of Bretonian exiles and errantry crusades. Errantry crusades being all about the knights, and exiles allowing you to take some heavier siege weaponry like a cannon in addition to your regular forces, which again is fantastic. So there's then not necessary, but really, really handy if you want to make some really interesting choices with your force. Now, the second part of this newsletter is the new miniatures for Tomb Kings of Khemri, and this is very similar to what we saw with the Bretonian line that was revealed a few weeks back. You get Nikap, an emissary of Cetera, which is pretty cool. And these Tomb Kings absolutely love their flails. But this is just a character who walks all over the place and extols the virtues of Cetera and talks about all of Cetra's mighty victories. And he's got the enchanted flail of conquered kings, which apparently is excellent for pulverizing those people who refuse to kneel before his exalted liege. So that is another glorious miniature, and I love the expression. I'm not quite sure where the air's coming from in this undead, why there's a voice coming out of that mouth, but it certainly looks like it's making an effort. And I love all the little scarab beetles that are coming and crawling up and down that scroll. We also have a magnificent battle standard bearer, although this one looks slightly less animated than the previous figure. It is a beautiful standard, and it looks like he's very much using it to hold himself up because he's undead and his limbs don't work properly, but you wouldn't mess with whatever that device is he's got in his hand there. And we've got a new figures for the Tomb Swarms, which is great, including the return of this figure in the middle here, who has been on the older ones from what I have seen online recently. But these are swarms of the corpses of undead scarab beetles and scorpions and other such critters that live in the tombs, animated by the Lich Priests and sent out to strip the flesh off the opposition. And these are magnificent models. I really like them. Properly reminds you of the Mummy, the first Mummy film, when they would just go over the top of you and then leave behind bones, and they just had you all. And it's very much what's supposed to be happening in these minis, and I bet they are both a swine to paint but really good fun to play with. And so there we are. That is the miniature. These are the new figures. The classic range of Tomb Kings will also be released, so for those people on Facebook in the Old World group who hate the old skeletons, bad luck. For those people who really like the old skeletons, well, hey, they're back. Excellent. I am on the fence. And honestly, I'm on the fence as to which box I am going to buy. I am going to buy a box. It was going to be Bretonia, but looking at the two, and we'll just scroll back up. Looking at the two of them, that one looks a lot more awesome than that one. And I'll be honest, that looks like a lot of hassle to paint. Whereas that is an awful lot of dry brushed bone, or if I'm even cheating, contrast or speed paint bone, and then just minor highlights. So that might be the way forward. Plus that dragon, I think, is a glorious miniature, and I'd like to have a proper look at it to see if there's any way to pose the wings other than how it is. But yeah, that is for me probably where I will put my money. So yeah, that's it. Now let's look at the next page, shall we? Because the next page is talking in a little bit more detail about Bretonia. And there's a video here which we're not going to look at, but Bretonian history, it talks you through. It was once ruled by the High Elves of Ulthuan, but fell into darkness and ruin after they left, because the elves were retreating slowly back towards their homeland as they decline. Although once my High Elf army is on the battlefield, there will be no more decline, there will be only victory, and the glory days of past will be back. Yeah, right, whatever. So modern Bretonia is born with Gilles le Breton, the first and greatest of the Bretonian kings, which is a bit of a crapper on the rest of the Bretonian kings, don't you think? Who probably do their very best and just can't match up to his deeds. But Gilles was the first to encounter the Lady of the Lake and drink from their holy chalice, becoming a Grail Knight, and this is the noblest goal for any knight, to follow in his footsteps and sup from the Grail. Hence we get the Grail Knights, and hence why the Grail Knights are both awesome and a rare unit, and you don't get to have many of them. The Chivalry Code: to serve the Lady of the Lake, to defend the land and those that dwell upon it, to protect the weak from the wicked, oppose the enemies of virtue and order, never give up the fight with your foes unvanquished, never break faith with a friend or ally, and to always display honour and courtesy towards those people of sufficient noble rank. To the peasants, kick 'em, it's fine. On the east of Bretonia is Athel Loren, where the Wood Elves live. Now, the Wood Elves descended from the High Elves, and instead of retreating to the coast and back to Ulthuan, they moved into the wood and became their own very specific offshoot with tree folk and dryads and war dancers and warhawk riders and some of the best miniatures in the game. That forest dragon, it's magnificent. And yeah, truly great miniatures, truly great range. And although officially Athel Loren is part of Bretonia, Bretonians don't dare go in there because God knows what's going to happen to you if you do. Now, the Green Knight is back. This was a glorious miniature back in the day, and it's a special character that is essentially immortal. So even though 300 years before the end times we are, as we are in this, the Green Knight is still around because it is a creature of legend who comes and aids where needed most, and never speaks a word, never utters. And so it may be a spirit, it may be that it's a different incarnation each time, we do not know, but the Green Knight's confirmed as a special character, and I'm hoping we get a new miniature for that. In the year of 2276 of the Imperial calendar, which is the present day, everything is in good order in Bretonia, and things are looking good. But Tomb King Cetra's assault on the border princes is an opportunity for them to show their mettle. So this is less of a attack on Bretonia at this point, as a crusade to fight the Tomb Kings and show exactly what they're made of. But that is it. The Bretonians they're one of those interesting factions. They got fleshed out a bit and then things stopped. And they didn't get a range for a very long time. Well, they didn't get a new range for a very long time. They haven't had an army book for yonks. So it makes perfect sense to put them front and centre in this edition. And the same with the Tomb Kings, who've been overdue a refresh and haven't had anything for a couple of editions now. But I will say, although the Tomb Kings are interesting, they aren't my most favoured undead faction. That will be the Vampire Counts, and although Bretonia are cool, it is still a relatively limited range, which is why, despite the fact that I will buy one or other of the boxes, I will be making a High Elf army this time out, and returning to my first love and actually doing it justice, hopefully, as an adult compared to how I was as an early teenage child with a shaky hand and no concept of paint thinner. I will say, however, painting High Elves is still horrendous with all of the white robes that you have to do shading on, and I'd forgotten quite how frustrating that is. So it may yet be 2030 before the Force sees a battle, but I will update you as we go. Anyway, that is it for the moment. The next one we will see, which I assume will be back to normal Mondays, will be Tomb King's Lore. Now, there's probably a lot more interesting stuff with the Tomb King's Lore, so we'll go and have an in-depth look at that in the next video. In the meantime, as this is likely to be the last video before the new year, unless Tom pulls a finger out and gets you a Doctor Who review in the meantime, have yourselves a very happy, very safe and very wonderful new year, and we will see you in 2024. Don't forget to leave a like and a subscribe, and make sure you watch these videos here, which will be all about the rest of the old world stuff that we have so far discussed and found out about. In the meantime, take care, see you on the other side.